Hi, welcome to Vet Resources Check-In. I'm Andy Martinez with the Veterans Experience Office. Today, our guest is John Bursler, VA's Chief Veterans Experience Officer. Today, we're going to talk about Afghanistan, the impact to our call centers, and how our veterans can help. Hi, John.
Howdy, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. We have our first question, which is what are your reactions to the Afghanistan withdrawal?
Yeah, my personal reactions are, I think, similar to how I felt um, when I started as an Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran myself, serving in the Marine Corps. A lot of the similar feelings coming when 2014 ISIS kind of took over a lot of the strongholds and a lot of the forward operating bases that we utilized in the time that I was there. And I remember a lot of those emotions and just the need to connect with my peers, my buddies, my fellow Marines and corpsmen, to just check in on them. And it was we used it as a good positive opportunity to reconnect. I wanted to make sure from a personal and professional standpoint that we were doing everything we could to create that opportunity for many of the Afghanistan veterans to connect with each other and to VA programs and services, as well as their families. We've seen a lot of interaction from their families contacting VA for different resources on programs, and not only on how to help one another, but also how to help our returning Afghan allies and the special immigrant visa families that will be resettling in the United States.
Thanks, John. So we talked about, some of the feelings you had. So some of our veterans are having those very same feelings. What types of outreach has VA done to support the Afghan allies and refugees?
So VA has done a tremendous amount to reach out to our veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors ever since really that Monday when Kabul really fell. We wanted to make sure that they knew that they weren't alone and that the VA was here for them. The vet centers were here for them in any way that we needed, as well as many of our nonprofit partners that do amazing work in tandem and in partnership with VA. So we did a really proactive outreach campaign through our Vet Resources e-newsletter, which is 12 million, has 12 million subscribers, and we send it out every week. And I think to date, the email like I mentioned, that Monday after Kabul fell was one of the highest, or has one of the highest open rates and click-through rates in VA e-newsletter Vet Resources history, which says a tremendous amount about how our Afghanistan veterans were feeling, how their families were feeling, and what they needed help in accessing and connecting with one another. So as it relates to our Afghan allies and those special immigrant visa Afghani interpreters and support staff that worked hand in hand with our military forces, there's a tremendous amount going on that I know we'll probably talk about here in a few minutes.
Yes. So let's talk about the resettlement efforts a little bit. What can veterans do to help with the resettlement efforts in their communities?
There's so much going on, and I think this is important to know that the services that are available to immigrants and refugees in many American communities are quite robust. Nonprofit organizations who have been doing this work for generations are kind of the mainstays in this space. There are a few veteran-focused organizations or organizations that are run by veterans that do work in this vertical, but most of those organizations are partnered directly with these more institutional nonprofit organizations. And what we have done, what VA has done in particular, is kind of compiled a list of organizations that are working directly in those communities with transitioning or resettling Afghan allies and families, and really presenting the call to action information on how to volunteer, how to adopt a family, how to donate supplies or food, or just be there as a peer support system to welcome them into our communities as they continue to resettle.
And one of the recently launched efforts with community groups is the welcome.us. Can you talk for a minute about that?
Yeah, Welcome.us is a really incredible partnership and an incredible collaboration, almost like a coalition of collaborative organizations, so to speak, that not only kind of bridge the partisan divide, but also bridge many different organizations that have worked in this space and have not worked in this space to do exactly that, to make sure that our resettling Afghan families have everything they need and are connected into the military and veteran and family communities that are spread throughout the United States. So I think it's a tremendous testament to our partners at Blue Star Families and all of the incredible collaborative partners that are involved in this Welcome.us effort.
Yeah, and we know the Department of Homeland Security is heavily involved with this, and they've started an effort called Operation Allies Welcome. Can you share with our viewers what that is?
Yeah, Operation Allies Welcome is innovative collaboration, that VA has committed several senior leaders to participate in, so that we're not only relaying the insights and the information that we're receiving from our veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors on Afghan resettlement and how to help, but also receiving the real-time information from the coalition and that the Department of Homeland Security is leading, so that we can ensure that those resources and programs are then sent and relayed to our customers, to our veterans and their families, so that they can get more involved and they can have play an active role in that resettlement process.
Yeah, it's very important. So let's get into a little more about how VA has been impacted and what are we hearing and seeing with our call centers, specifically our crisis line and our 411 line. And we also have our vet center line and our caregiver line. What are we seeing on that front?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andy. Since the fall of Kabul, we've seen around a 5% increase in calls to the veteran crisis line, which is important because these professionals are always ready and willing, 24 hours, 7 days a week, to wrap their arms around these veterans and families who need help and need someone to speak with. We've also seen a significant jump in number of text messages and chat with the chat feature online, which is two other great channels that veterans can communicate and make sure that they have the right access to the programs that VA has available. I also know that the caregiver support program has seen a significant increase in around almost 9% of caregivers and families contacting VA relating to Afghanistan and how to secure resources and programs and services for the veterans that their loved ones. And I think that's an incredibly important metric, because having that channel for family members to increase their access, that can only help VA in improving the outcomes for the veterans and their families themselves.
Yeah, those numbers are critical, and the vet center line, seeing that increase by 10% is also important. Well, we've talked about a lot of things today, John, and we really thank you for your time. For our viewers, please tune in to our next Vet Resources check-in. They are daily at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Veteran News Network. You're going to see a slide in a moment with some valuable resources to include the PTSD Coach app, 411 call center, the crisis line, resources that you may need. So please tune in next time, and thank you for joining us.